Previously on ICTBC.
Next month, we're going to be reading one that I've always wanted to read.
Same.
And it's crazy because it's like I haven't read it.
Wait, is that
Octavia Butler's
Kindred.
Oh. And so she's a science fiction writer, African-American woman. What is it? Parable of the Sower was one of my favorite books for a long time.
I have not read her at all either.
Well, join us next month. Hi. Jinx.
You owe me a Coke? No, I don't. It's fine.
I'm Librarian Racine.
And I am Librarian Sarah.
Thanks for joining us for ICTBC.
Yes, our February edition. We're going to be discussing Kindred by Octavia Butler. It was my first time reading it, even though it's been around for a really long time.
Okay, if you don't know about the book.
Tell us about the book.
All right. Octavia Butler was an African-American science fiction writer. And Kindred is a story about a woman named Dana who goes back and forth in time. She starts out, it's 1976, her time. She's moving into a new house with her husband, Kevin. And then suddenly she finds herself on this muddy bank. And then she sees a child drowning in the river. She runs in, she saves him. She comes back out on the bank. The man that's with the boy is hostile.
Mm-hmm. Puts a gun right in her face.
Yep. Calls her a word that nobody's ever said to. Well, that it is it's offensive. Yeah. There is some language in this book that is offensive. And she starts going back to her husband. She's gone for seconds, and she goes from one part of the room to another part of the room in a moment. But yet, when she was there for like 20 minutes or 15 minutes.
Not very long.
Very long.
Definitely more than a few seconds.
Right. So it's the story about a woman from 1976 who gets sucked back into 1816. Was that the time?
I think so. Well, it changes, but the first time I think it's like in the 18 teens in Maryland, no less. So she's currently in LA, I think, right? And so it's the 70s, so we're not post-racial, but we're definitely no longer, we're making some progress. And she gets sucked back to Maryland in the 1800s when it's still very much slave time. And so it is a book that is both a time travel book because of the nature of her going back and forth between these two times, but also very much a slave narrative. It is brutal in some places. If you're joining us, I would love to know, and I'm sure Racine would too, what your thoughts are on the book and the historical aspects of it. I thought it was very much more of a historical book than, say, a science fiction book. What do you think?
I think of it as science fiction if you're hopping back and forth through time.
Right.
Okay, another book that I would think of that would be similar, I don't know if many people have read it, like Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell.
I haven't. It's on my
and Bone Clocks.
List. Okay.
The Bone Clocks. I put that on the Rita Likes.
Okay.
Because it's this jumping through time, and that one also works in like cli-fi. And so, okay, I think that science fiction is broad enough to be used for this book.
May I interject?
Okay.
So after I was done with it, and I actually, which is very different for me, I read this book about a week early. Did
you like it?
It sucked me right in.
Yeah.
It was a very compelling narrative.
Yeah.
And
you want to know what happens.
I did want to know what happened.
And it's like, oh my gosh.
Even as brutal,
is she going to survive this?
As brutal as some of the sections were, it was compelling. I wanted to know how Dana was going to get out of the latest trip, because and I think we're okay with spoilers, right?
Yeah, you guys are okay.
So the way that she goes forward in time is because Rufus calls her, right? He's in trouble. He might die. Rufus happens to be her ancestor. And the way that she comes back in time is if she thinks that her life is in danger.
Right.
Like death is threatened.
Rufus is the son of a wealthy plantation owner and
slave owner.
Pretty
brutal.
Here's the thing.
Oh, I went back to my interjection. Can I go back to my interjection?
Okay, fine.
I'm so sorry, Racy. Back to the fantasy part of it, the science fiction part of it. A lot of the criticisms, not criticisms, but discussion.
Critiques.
Essays, talk about how it's fantasy because specifically she does not explain the nature of the time travel, right? It's all feeling.
She's just backwards and forwards.
Usually there's like a time machine, or we learn all about the wrinkle in time. I don't know, but there's more to it. And in this book, it becomes a non-issue. Octavia Butler specifically does not talk about why.
I like that she doesn't address it.
I do too.
I mean, that's kind of cool because it's like there are things that happen in this world, and it's like I think you could find a scientific explanation for it, but more importantly than the explanation is that it happened. Does that make sense?
It does, but I want to know how your definitions of science fiction play into that, because there isn't really a scientific reason that she's going back and forth in time, right?
Science, but not readily apparent. Maybe somebody from the future is sending her back in time and doing these manipulations. It's like Interstellar.
Okay.
Somebody from the future sends them messages and helps them out in order for them
but it was
for the
human whole time.
Huh?
Oh, sorry. Spoilers for Interstellar. Okay. But anyway,
you don't have to know the science behind science fiction.
But I feel like that's why it's science fiction.
Well,
agree to disagree.
You will agree to disagree because you know what? Science fiction, I liked that she was doing this kind of book. Look at the other science fiction of the time. This is 1979 when this was published.
Before my time.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know what the other science is. No,
so,
tell me. It's okay.
So we had Star Wars. We had Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this is the opposite end of the spectrum.
But no one else is traveling in time, right? It's just Dana. Why Dana? Why Rufus? Why this ancestral line? Because that's the other thing, is that she cannot, in all the other time traveling movies and films and things like that, the trope is that you cannot change anything in the past or it can have major repercussions in the future, right? Like if you talk to somebody, if you pick up a coin off the street, somebody else may have been supposed to do, well, that's a lot more dire, but I was thinking...
Oh, you were thinking of the butterfly effect.
Yes, the butterfly effect. So,
little things will disrupt the timeline.
Exactly. So, with Dana, going back to slave times, right? The one time that you, no matter what the ramifications are, you really would like to change it because it was an awful time. I think we can all agree on that. And but she can't, right? She has to keep saving Rufus, who turns out to be a little...
He's not a sympathetic character.
He's not a sympathetic character. At first,
Do you think that everybody in your history is a sympathetic character?
No, but you don't have to save them time and time again either.
Yeah, that's true.
But she has to continue to do that. She has to continue to save him until her ancestor is actually born, right?
Yeah.
And she can't let him die.
Right.
Because then she would disappear. She would cease to exist.
Yeah. It was cool. It was really cool. I hope that we're not like spoiling it if you haven't read this, but
even if we are, it's worth a read, don't you think?
Yes. Oh, yes. Well, and
we haven't even talked about the like explosive ending, which maybe we can. Not.
We're not going to talk about that yet because there are some other things.
Greg, our film guy, hasn't finished it yet, so he is not wanting
Plug
to hear
your
the
ears,
ending.
Greg.
No, it's okay. We're done with the spoilers right now.
Okay. So, there was.
What did you guys think? Do you have any thoughts on the theme of the science fiction, on this whole idea that she can't change anything in the past? Share them with us in the comments, and we'll be able to see what you say in real time. Quite fun.
Okay.
Please ask your question.
Okay, there was one point where Dana takes her husband.
Right.
Because he grabs onto her.
Which I think is also really funny. Can we talk when she has the bag? Like, she can just tie a bag around her waist and it comes with her. Like, I just think that's kind of silly. But
well, and her thinking about, I can't drive.
I know.
I can't ride in a car. What am I going to do? Like, slam into a tree if I get pulled backwards in time?
Because even in just a matter of seconds could have
she doesn't know
ramifications.
Yeah. So what were you saying about the bag?
No. I just thought that was interesting, that anything that she pulls, that she has tied to her or whatever, comes back with her. And that's how Kevin ends up going back with her. You were talking about that, and I interrupted. I'm an interrupter.
I thought it was interesting because I was thinking about the story, and, to him, she disappears.
Right.
The first couple of times.
He thinks she's full of it.
Right. She's hallucinating, she's losing her marbles, and then he gets taken back.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh my gosh, and two, he's Caucasian, she's African American, they're married, and the slaves that are there are like, yeah, that's your husband? No.
Yeah, no. Because while it's rare in the 70s, it's completely illegal and unheard of in the 1800s, right?
Right.
So they have to play the roles of master and slave. And Kevin, her husband, is wildly uncomfortable with it, but it's a survival technique. I mean, I think Dana goes to great lengths to protect herself while she's back there, as she should, but just the theme that keeps coming up is how easy it is to kind of fall back in line with these horrible conditions, right? Like, why the slaves and the black people allowed this to happen to themselves when she's all, like, I don't want to sound not insincere, but because I don't believe, anyway. It's just, it raises a lot of difficult questions.
Well, when you have people that are born into slavery,
right.
The kids are playing games
right.
of auctioning each other off.
Right.
It's just mind-blowing thinking about trying to go back into that time and trying to assimilate, because I think that the white people that Dana encounters know that something is off about her.
Well, because
she
she's educated.
Looks at them.
Oh yeah.
In a different way than one of their slaves would. Mm-hmm. And she's educated, and she reads better than other people.
She reads better than the white people.
Yeah. I think that's the part. Octavia Butler does a really good job in putting you into the predicament of Dana.
Yeah.
The woman that's gone back.
Yeah.
And what she has to go through.
I just think it's do we have a question? I have trouble thinking of it as science fiction. Greg, I agree with you.
That's okay. I'm going to disagree with y'all. Sorry.
Great comment. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you for joining in there. What was the next one?
I don't know. I lost it. because we were talking about...
You can find it.
I know. I just lost all my words. But I do think it was a really interesting play that she decided to make Kevin white, and in this whole plot line. I thought that was a really interesting choice, because it created a whole nother level of difficulties when they went back in time. And then Kevin gets left. Dana's home for what, 8 days? And
it's 5 years.
It's 5 years for him.
Yeah. That's the part I can't imagine. You're 26, but yet you lose like physical years of your life.
Right.
I mean, surely time travel has to just affect the body.
Right.
In
You would
ways,
think.
yeah.
But even
Because if you live those 5 years, I think your body has breathed air, you know.
Well, he had a beard, he had scars.
Yeah.
He had developed an accent.
Oh, yeah. That would be weird.
It would be weird.
Yeah.
Because they've only been apart for 8 days, and all of a sudden he has an accent. He has an accent. And I was imagining a, like, Colonel Sanders beard.
Well, but, and he's prematurely gray, and if anything would turn you gray, it would be this experience.
Gosh. But I love that when he was back, because there is this whole, does it change you going back into this very different time and place? And he remained uncomfortable. He tried to help slaves escape to the north. He became this kind of, which doesn't really play into the whole like time travel thing, because if he wasn't there, would these people have made it when they escaped? I just think it's what Dana couldn't do to change certain things about the future, he did. We don't really know. She doesn't talk about it very much in the story. She kind of glazes right over it.
She glazes over that part, but then...
Well, because it's Dana's story, so, like, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean...
Yeah, she's the main focus.
Yeah. And she's the reason that everybody goes back in time. Like...
That's true.
It's Dana and Rufus. It's
right.
not. It has nothing to do with Kevin. He gets stuck there.
Well, and then later on in the book, after things are resolved, they go back to Maryland to research this and look through newspaper articles. That was a part where it was like, okay, they're looking for that.
Oh, yes. Laura, that was awful.
Oh.
He described a scene that just... Hi, Laura, by the way. Thanks for joining us. But the scene where I'm not even going to recount it because you should really only read that once. But there is a scene that he describes of a woman in childbirth, and it's horrifying.
But
I'm not going to repeat it.
This was a brutal book.
Read the book if you want to find out.
This was really... Sorry, it was...
Well, it was a slave narrative.
Right.
You can't pretend like that stuff didn't happen.
Did he read those in school?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like maybe we did. But then, nerd alert, NPR was doing this thing where it was like, how do you teach slavery in school? And they asked a question, and I was like very confident in my answer, but it was wrong. And I was like, oh, maybe I didn't learn about all the things that I should have. Maybe I need to do more research. Maybe I need to open myself up to more. As difficult as it is to read.
Yeah. No, it was
still a compelling book. Like, I absolutely loved it, and I really like to pick up one of her other books. Parable of the Sower was her other famous book, I think, which is more science fiction-y, right?
Right.
You've read it.
But still, that one has science fiction elements to it that she's not explaining. And I don't think that's bad. I think the important thing is the human reaction to something that has happened due to outstanding forces. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, it does.
And maybe that is by definition fantasy, but I think of fantasy as being wholly in a different realm or in a different...
Like there has to be dragons and it has to be on a different world and...
Well...
There need to be hobbits. I think it's really interesting, and I think that it's another part of literature that can be really subjective.
Yeah.
You know,
Maybe
and
that's
you look
it.
for the elements and what works for you, and we want to put things in neat little boxes, but sometimes they don't. And this is definitely a book that, the way it was described to me as a fantasy, was not what I hold to be fantasy-like, because
Yeah.
it was definitely more historical fiction.
Yeah.
But at the same time, had those tiny little elements of the science.
Have you read Handmaid's Tale?
Yes.
Did you think that it was similar to that?
Because it's in a future that doesn't exist, no. I would say that was more fantasy.
Okay. Just throwing that out there. I
This
just
was about a
curious.
time that happened,
Yeah.
about awful things that actually happened to people.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm just.
It's subjective.
Yeah. And yes. Exogenesis was.
I don't even know what that word means.
It's her other series.
Oh, okay.
And what it is aliens come to Earth, put everybody into suspended animation, or the Earthlings that are left after they've jacked up their Earth. And so these aliens come, put people to sleep into suspended animation for 200 years or 500 years. The Earth heals, they release the Earthlings again, but they have people, the aliens start living among the Earthlings.
Huh.
And they join with the Earthlings to mingle their genetic information.
It does sound a lot more science fiction-y than something like this.
Well, and yeah, it is. It's very, it is, I guess, harder science fiction because.
Yeah, Laura called it deep sci-fi. I
Yeah.
like that.
Good on you, Laura. So, yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I love the way that Octavia Butler looks at the different lens and finds a different way. And I think it's really cool that we got the opportunity to read a science fiction book for an author of a different ethnicity than us.
By the way, that's what we chose. We chose Kindred to fit our, I think it's category number 9, author of a different ethnicity for the Read ICT Challenge. So if you're reading along with us, or if you haven't, pick it up because it's really good.
Well, and we're going to put a book list of read-alikes.
Yes.
And what was it? On Such a Full Sea is another one that I would have suggested
Okay.
if we hadn't have read this one, because it's a future Baltimore, and it's almost narrated by a community.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Maybe
It
we'll
was
pick that one up.
beautiful and lyrical, and so On Such a Full Sea, I can't remember the author's name. Do I get fired?
No.
Okay, good.
We'll send a link to the read-alikes in the comments here. So,
More coffee.
it's fine. It happens. Oh, look, it's up. Our little book cover. It's like the same thing. Okay. So there was one question that I found on this discussion questions. I know we were going over, so bear with me because it kind of blew my mind a little bit.
Okay.
May I see your questions? And I'll just
Yes.
find it real fast. Okay. Do you believe that Dana and Kevin's story actually happened to them, or that they simply got caught up in the nostalgia of moving old papers and books? Like, I hadn't even considered it until I read that question. I don't think so. I think
I
she
don't
actually
think
went back
so.
in time, but it kind of like, what? You know? Record
That's
scratch?
cool.
Because and then in the end, when they are going and they're kind of following up on this stuff, when she goes back in time, she'd bring maps of Maryland and, pencils and papers and...
Okay, how's this? Do you think that you would have paid attention to a slave narrative as much as you would Dana's story?
Like, do you think that Dana made it more compelling?
Dana, yeah.
Well, I think as the
She's somebody
heroine.
from the 20th century,
As
as opposed to somebody who lived through it, an actual human being.
Well, because she had to live with this knowledge that the world was different now. So she kind of fought it in the ways that she could during, with Rufus. She acquiesced a lot, but she still kept a fire.
Yeah.
As much as she gave as much as she had to survive, but she held on to what she could to keep her, mental faculties, because my goodness, that would be difficult.
Oh, hi, Katrina. Well, okay, Octavia Butler sadly has left us. I think she passed when she was 56.
I don't know, I looked it up. It was, I don't remember.
Anyways, you need to go back and look at her books if you haven't, because it's wonderful. She's a good writer.
I would really like to visit more of her works, because, well, they've just always been recommended to me, so maybe I can use it for another one of the categories. But
speaking of
there's
categories,
so much that we didn't get to talk about with this book, but, that's the nature of these discussions.
Yeah.
So we'll keep the comments going if you want to keep talking about Kindred, and if you have other thoughts, if you join us later, and we'll join you then.
where's Magpie Murders?
I've got it right here. Magpie Murders. This will be our book choice for March. I can't think it'll be the third Wednesday in March, whatever day that is. But this is going to be for our detective or true crime category. I don't know what number that is. I don't know. Probably should have looked. 3? Who knows?
The cold has gotten to our brains.
It's really cold outside. But it's The Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz, and we actually have a book set of this, so we will have copies available at Central for checkout that are outside of kind of our regular catalog. So if they're all checked out or whatever, let us know, and we can actually send one to your branch if you need to, or you can pick one up here at Central. Just tell them you want to pick up the ICTBC book. Oh, Greg wanted to put our thing up. That's cool. Good job, Greg. Okay. Do you want to tell them what it's about at all? I don't actually know.
It's a murder within a murder.
Okay.
Anthony Horowitz started as a teen writer, and he did the Alex Rider series.
Oh, okay.
Such good writing for action. So I am super jazzed about us reading this one. And he's got a second mystery out. So
In the series? Is this a series?
maybe. I don't. It's not advertised as a series when this one came out.
Okay. Sorry.
Sorry.
Doesn't matter. We'll figure it out by March.
Yeah.
So join us. That'll be the third Wednesday at 12:30 right here on Facebook. We're so glad that you could join us. Laura, thanks for the wonderful insight. Greg, thanks for your comments as well. And we will see you guys next month.
Bye.